Greetings and welcome. I'm Steve Clemons, editor-at-large of The Hill. Thanks so much for joining us today for our forum on a connected and sustainable society. Over the next hour, we're going to examine the leaps in digitalization that can lead to a more sustainable and equitable tomorrow. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Nokia, for its support of today's program. And from healthcare to agriculture to education, massive digital leaps are transforming the way we live, learn, and work. Yet the true value of a connected and sustainable society can only be felt when it is accessible and within reach. Today's conversations are going to explore the various facets of a livable, interconnected society through the lens of healthcare, education, and agriculture. Before we begin, a few housekeeping notes. You can tweet us at The Hill Events using the hashtag TheHillConnects. That's a cool one. We're broadcasting live and we'll take your questions throughout the program. As with any live stream, if you experience occasional trouble with the video, do not take it out on your computer. Just push refresh and it all should be well after that. My first guest is Congresswoman Robin Kelly from Illinois. She serves as the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus Health Brain Trust. She's also the vice chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee. Congressman Kelly, it's great to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us. You know, I just got back from South by South. I got back from South by Southwest in Austin. And, you know, Dell had one of these kind of big houses taken over, and it was called The Experience. And what I sort of felt like they were doing in that block, it had lots of like dark lighting and, you know, these things, but it was the notion of dense hyperconnection, VR experiences, you know, being able to be transported into a lot of different places. And I just said to myself, wow, is that going to be America where we have dense, high-performing networks that change the way we interact with each other, the way we reach information, the way we achieve health? And I know that this is an obsession of yours. So what's the gap, as you see it, between my experience at South by Southwest and America as it is today?
Well, as you know, and again, thank you for having me on the show, my district is urban, suburban, and rural, so really a microcosm of Illinois, but you also could say the United States. And through COVID especially, a light was shown on who has and who doesn't have. And there are parts of my district where they could not experience that because they can't get online. They don't have the broadband infrastructure. And secondly, there's another part of the district, some the same, they couldn't afford it even if they had the infrastructure. So that's where I see the gap, that people cannot take advantage, you know, of broadband, the internet, e-learning, telehealth, even applying for a job online. Because they don't have the infrastructure, and some people just simply can't afford to go online.
So, Representative Kelly, how much of that is going to be fixed when the infrastructure bill and the projects to it roll out? I remember interviewing a high-tech CEO last year. I think it was last year. It's all been blurry the last couple of years. But in that, what they had been advocating for was a kind of geo-marking and geo-cataloging of the parts of America and communities and cities and rural areas that were not connected. And so that mapping was a very key piece of beginning to look at how we solve some of these problems. I honestly don't know what the state of that is. I knew that it passed, but I don't know if much has been done.
Well, the goal of the infrastructure bill plus, I'll say, since it's more than roads and bridges, right, is to make sure that all parts of the United States, all people, regardless of their zip code or where they live, that they will be able to get online, whether it's because their infrastructure improved or they receive resources to be able to get online. This is just so important. And again, with what we've been through the last couple of years, it's just proven why it is important for people to be able to get online, to have access to healthcare, education. There's something called the homework gap, and at one point, 17 million students couldn't get online. I think it's down to 9 million, still far too many. We talked about today, moms or dads having to sit in front of McDonald's or take their child to the library or to Starbucks just so they could get online and do their work.
You had in July 2021, again, I don't know the status of this, but you had introduced something called the Evaluating Disparities and Outcomes of Telehealth during the COVID-19 Emergency Act of 2021. I don't know if this became law, but I'm sure that whether it did or not, You had hearings, you met with people, you met with interest groups to get a sense of what our deficits in our response have been. I'd love to get some insights into that. And as we're discussing today, high quality networks and what they could bring, what did you see where we failed, and how might our topic today actually be useful in addressing some of our failures?
Sure. That bill, as we say in a nutshell, we wanted to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of what happened during COVID and what happened with telehealth. So, and actually, even though the whole bill didn't pass, there were parts of the bill that passed in the omnibus last week. It directs the Medicare Payment Advisory Commission to examine telehealth utilization, expenditures, payment policy, and impacts on access to care and quality for Medicare beneficiaries. And it further breaks down the telehealth utilization data by services provided, provider type, and geographic location of patients and providers. And also directs the Office of the Internal General, or the OIG, at HHS to submit a report on instances of fraud and expenditures and savings. So the Inspector General's office. So that we got some good things in, and we're really, proud of that.
Do you think? I mean, you're a big champion as well of telehealth, and I'm glad for that, because I have a much more friendly relationship with my doctor because of telehealth. I'm not one of these people who likes to go in, but not, that'll get me out of the picture here. But I think one of the questions that I sense that is out there is a sense of concern about the reimbursability of telehealth, about insurance companies in telehealth. What is the game now in telehealth? Is it solid, or can the payments part of that was rolled out as part of COVID and the fact that we're all living in a digital experience with our healthcare needs, is that on solid ground, or is it wobbly?
Well, right now, because we're still in the midst of the pandemic, the payments are the same. And there is legislation that some of my colleagues have around keeping it the same, not differentiating between when you actually make an office visit and when it's actually telehealth. So we'll see. That I'll say plane hasn't landed yet, because we're still within the, confines of the rules and regulations around the pandemic. We haven't moved off of that yet, but many of us are hoping that the payments remain the same.
You have this really sweet tweet from yesterday. I love it. And you're sweet. I don't know if you know what you tweeted or whether your staff did it, but it's under Representative Robin Kelly, and it said yesterday, or today, which was yesterday, the president signed the appropriations bill into law, which includes my Maternal Health Quality Improvement Act. There's this, I think it's you sitting there with this little baby. So one question is, who's the baby? And two, as we're kind of looking at these maternal health questions, and you've got three kinds of zones in your that are in your district, how might denser, higher quality networks really enhance maternal health?
Well, the baby is, my chief of staff had a baby 3 months ago. So that was him visiting his new boss. That was him visiting me in the office. And, again, with maternal health, that can give women access to where they didn't have access before. People are shut down sometimes because they don't have the transportation. They're shut down because they don't have the healthcare facilities right in their neighborhoods. Sometimes they can't get off of work, or they have other children and they have to find, childcare for the other children. So telehealth, if you're pregnant, really whatever circumstance, it will help tremendously. And I've actually spoken to obstetricians, and they said to me that, their patient, of course, you're not going to deliver a baby that way, but for other services needed, that they use telehealth. They don't have to come in to get a refill on maybe their vitamins they're taking, or, something like that. That telehealth works just fine.
Congresswoman, we're taking questions from the audience, and we have a question here from Josephine Millward, who's an advisor at Seraphim Capital, and she asks, how do you envision policy supporting space tech or satellites in providing connectivity to rural and underserved areas? Interesting question.
That is an interesting question, and I must say I haven't given a lot of thought to that. But anything that will help put the rural areas in particular, because at least in my district they have the hardest time and they have the least amount of access and the furthest way to drive. I definitely would want to look into and further explore.
Let me ask you another question. I don't know if you were at the President's State of the Union address. I was covering it that night and up in one of the press areas. But the President said a couple of things. One, inflation, sky high. They're trying to address it. Two, fuel, gas prices at the pump going through the roof. This is, of course, we've seen crisis in Russia, Ukraine, which we're scrambling around. But when I think, and then just before the President's State of the Union address, we had prices on things like steak, peanut butter, just staples that were in people's lives, increasing dramatically year on year. And I guess my question to you is, when you kind of think about all this, how are your constituents feeling this moment economically? How are they looking at the White House as whether the White House is hearing them and actually credibly responding to their needs right now?
From me being around some of my constituents and phone calls coming in, of course, people don't want their grocery bills going up or their gas bills rising. But also, I don't think they fully put it on President Biden that this is the reason that this is happening, and they know that he's a down-to-earth guy. And I think they know that he's trying to do everything he can to correct the situation. And I think that we will slowly come out of it. The war in Ukraine does not help the situation at all. But, we're not getting a tremendous amount of phone calls about, the price of groceries. Yes, people are concerned, but we haven't received a tremendous amount of phone calls because I just think that people know that the administration and we are we don't like it either. We buy gas also, and we have to buy groceries. I'm a regular person, like other people, and yes, I noticed myself. My grocery bills, have definitely gone up.
Let me just ask you finally. In the infrastructure bill, I hear two stories. Some saying we're not yet feeling the presence of these infrastructure projects out across America. Others I talked to in the Biden administration says, oh, money's flowing. Does your district feel money flowing right now to projects that are real and tangible, leading to jobs and investment?
I don't know if they feel it all over, if they feel it flowing, but they're, again, I haven't heard a lot of complaints. They're anticipating the money. I made some phone calls today to some of my areas that will be getting money, and some of the money goes to the governor. So it's how the governors are dispersing and how it fits in to their plans too. And then some of the money, is grant money. But no, my district is excited about the possibilities.
Well, listen, I always love talking to you. Thank you so much. Representative Robin Kelly of Illinois. She is vice chair of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. She's also chair, really cool group I like very much, the Congressional Black Caucus Health Brain Trust. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Have a great day.